everybody, welcome to my channel. My name's Mel. Thank you so much for joining me today for my last mid-month wrap-up. Okay, so this is my last mid-month wrap-up. If you have watched my channel changes video, which I will link in the description below and in the eye, then you will know that I have made some changes to my channel. One of the changes that I have made is that going forward from now, I will not be doing monthly wrap-ups in the way that I have been doing those monthly wrap-ups, and I won't be doing mid-month wrap-ups at all. For more details about how it's all going to work, I suggest you do go and watch that video, but I just want to let you know for now that what I have decided to do is there'll still be a wrap-up every month, but it will be a genre wrap-up, so it will cycle through 3 different genre category wrap-ups. So the first one will be fantasy, sci-fi, magical realism, fabulism. The second one will be historical, classic, contemporary and literary fiction, and then the third one will be gothic, thriller, mystery. So that will be starting in July, which means, like I said, this is my final end of the month wrap up. So this is the video where I'm going to talk you through all of the books that I read in the second half of May. I'll also quickly let you know what books I read for the first half of May as well, although I have talked about those in more detail in my mid-May wrap-up, so I will link that in the description below as well and in the eye, so you can go and check that out and get more details of what I thought of the books that I read in the first half of May. And at the end, I'll talk you through my stats. Now, again, that's changed as well. Going forward, I will have a quarterly stats video that will outline all of the information about genres and page numbers, etc. for every 3 months. But because this is for May and I will be starting the new way of doing things as of June, I will tell you the stats for May at the end as well. So in May, I read 7 books. The books that I've already talked to you about are The Girl Who Speaks Bear by Sophie Anderson, The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue by V.E. Schwab, and Murder on the Orient Express by Agatha Christie. In that mid-month wrap-up, I was halfway through The Miniaturist by Jessie Burton. It is a book that is set in, I believe, the 1700s in Amsterdam. We follow a young woman who has recently married and moved from her country town in rural the Netherlands, or Holland I think it's probably was known as then, to Amsterdam. She is feeling very isolated. She's feeling very confused because her husband is very standoffish towards her. His sister is very strange. It's all very strange, very weird vibes. So there's sort of that going on. Her husband buys her what is essentially, she calls it a cabinet. It's a dollhouse basically, but it's like a wardrobe. And when you open the doors, and inside is a miniature replica of the house that they live in. It's usually a kid's toy, but he buys it for her, which kind of annoys her, but then she starts getting interested in it, and she goes to a miniaturist in town and orders some miniature figures, and then the miniaturist starts sending her figures that she didn't order. Then there's also a bunch of weird stuff going on in the house, and yeah, they kind of tie together. I gave this one 3 stars, so I did enjoy it, but yeah, it's middle of the road. Core Pilot got 6.14, which is a 3-star. There were a few things that just didn't really work for me, and yeah, overall it was okay, and yeah, that's about it really. So initially I was really enjoying it, so I think in that mid-month wrap-up I would have said that I really enjoyed it and I expected to really love it. But the more I read it, the less it sort of made sense, and I really found that the ending just didn't really work for me. I also didn't feel like the overall storyline and the storyline of the miniaturist and the miniature figures that she was making kind of worked together. I'll just read a little tweet that I sent to the group that we were reading it with. So as you guys know, I was buddy reading it. I was reading this for Eurovision-a-thon, apologies, and there were a few people who were reading it for Eurovision-a-thon, so we ended up buddy reading it together. So this is what I sent to that group. Yeah, it was like she had a cool name for a book, but not really a story to go with it, so she just added the title and the flimsy story of the miniaturist to another book she was writing, which is, yeah, how I ended up feeling about the book. They just didn't seem to tie together that much, and the storyline of the miniaturist wasn't really a storyline. Yeah, it really lowered the rating for me because that just didn't make that much sense. But like I said, overall, I thought it was interesting. She's a very good writer. I mean, in terms of her descriptions and the way she structures her sentences and the characters, they were all really well done, but it just didn't make sense. The stories just didn't fit together for me, so I ended up giving it 3 stars. Next up, I reread Jurassic Park by Michael Crichton. This one is not a book that I was reading for Eurovision-a-thon. I did try and figure out how I could make that fit for Eurovision-a-thon, but I really couldn't. But it was my Book into Film Club book pick for the month. So for those of you that don't know, my Book into Film Club is an in real life book club that I run. The idea is that we read a book and then we watch an adaptation of the book. So the choice for this month ended up being Jurassic Park. If you guys have been here from the beginning, you will know that one of my favourite books of 2019 was Jurassic Park. I was blown away by Jurassic Park, partly because I do like the movie, don't get me wrong, but I honestly just didn't expect the book to be as good and as interesting and as well written as it was based on the movie. The movie's more kind of an action, fun adventure movie, whereas the book is much more scientific, much more nuanced. There's a lot more character development, there's a lot more information about the science, and a lot more storyline developed around the actual creation of Jurassic Park and the science involved in creating the dinosaurs. There's this whole other part that happens before the main story in the movie that happens that's really, really interesting and builds up a lot more tension and a lot more storyline behind Hammond and the dinosaurs. So yeah, I really enjoyed this book. I thought that it was really interesting and well written and just generally fantastic. As I said, this is my a reread of the book, and I loved it just as much, and I was again blown away by how different it is from, I mean, the overall storyline is pretty similar, but just in terms of the nuance and the attention to detail and the characterization, so much more interesting and just better in general. So on CallPile, I gave this one an 8.86, which is a 4-star. I would absolutely recommend this to anyone. I think that it's really fantastic, and yeah, super excited that I reread it. That was Eurovision-a-thon and also non-Eurovision-a-thon. At the end of the month, I participated in Ally-a-Thon, which was a readathon that was hosted by Cece from Cece's Reading Journey, Mo from Paperback Mo, Steph from Steph's Bookish World, and Jeff from Dreaded and Redded. I will leave all of their channels in the description below so that you can go and check them out. The idea behind this readathon is becoming a better ally, essentially. So this particular one was around Ramadan and Eid, and so the idea was to learn more about Ramadan and Eid and how it all works, what it's all about, etc. So to that end, they created a readathon that had reading prompts, but also had a Notion with a whole bunch of different resources that you could use to learn more, become a better ally. I don't feel like I did particularly well in this readathon at becoming a better ally. I only ended up watching 2 videos from the Notion, and I only ended up reading 2 books. I do intend to go back and to look at the Notion again and get more information, because obviously just because the readathons ended doesn't mean that my attempt to become a better ally should. The 2 books that I read for this readathon were My Story by Malala Yousafzai. This is a middle grade memoir by Malala Yousafzai about her life. And then Once Upon an Eid, which is a collection of short stories, and they were edited by S.K. Ali and Aisha Saeed. So, I haven't rated either of these books. The first one is because it's a memoir and I don't rate memoirs, and the second one because it was a selection of short stories written by different authors, so I don't know how to rate those because, you know, if I really loved one story but then I didn't love another story, how will that affect the rating? So I just left that one alone. So I'm sure most people know who Malala Yousafzai is. She is a Pakistani activist. She immigrated to Britain and she has been fighting for human rights and justice since then. She's an amazing young woman and the book was just incredible to read. Like I said, it was middle grade, so it definitely wasn't written for me. It definitely read very young, but that's okay because it was aimed at young children. I definitely think that it is something that young children should read. It should be available in primary schools. It should be something that if books are set for primary schools anywhere, that should happen. Books aren't set for primary schools in Australia or in Tassie anyway, but yeah, I would definitely have that in my classroom. I would definitely read it aloud to a class. I think it's really important, both from a learning about the world point of view, but also thinking about how you can make a difference in the world. So, highly recommend, absolutely fantastic book. And then Once Upon an Eid, like I said, it's a selection of short stories from a bunch of different young Muslim people perspectives about Eid. I have to admit that I knew next to nothing about Eid when I started doing this readathon and when I started reading this book, which obviously was the point of the readathon, and I really enjoyed this short story collection. I wouldn't say that all of the stories were amazing stories that I will, that I would have rated super highly. They were all really enjoyable and they were all definitely worth a read. They're all middle grade, so they're all aimed at young children or young people. But yeah, I definitely would recommend reading them. I thought it was really interesting and I now feel like I know a lot more about Eid and about the celebration of Eid and about Ramadan in general. Definitely still have heaps more to learn, but I'm glad to have learned a little bit. Yeah, so I'd highly recommend it. It was really interesting to get different perspectives from backgrounds from different parts of the world and different experiences of Eid, different ways of celebrating Eid, and the different people who are Muslim but also have other different backgrounds. So that was really interesting and not something that I thought about really before, which I realize makes me sound like an absolute idiot, but that's where we are. So yeah, those are all the books that I read in the second half in May in general. So in terms of stats, let's have a look. So I read 3 middle grade books this month and 4 adult books. No young adult books. I read 2,389 pages. I read 2 magical realism, 1 mystery, 1 historical fiction, 1 science fiction, 1 contemporary and 1 biography. That's all the books that I read in the month of May, and that is the end of my end of May wrap up. Please comment below if you have read any of the books that I read in the month of May. Let me know what you thought of them, or if you would like to read any of the books. I'd love to know that as well. Comment below as well and let me know what you read in the month of May and how you went in general. If you would like to leave a comment but you don't know what, then please leave me a stack of books emoji. That would be fantastic. All my social media details are listed in the description below, so if you want to go and find me on any of those platforms, please feel free to do so. Thank you so much for watching. I really do hope that you enjoyed this video. If you did enjoy this video, I would love it if you would go and subscribe to my channel and leave me a thumbs up. So yeah, that's it guys. Like I said, thank you so much for watching and I will see you next time.